Hi, everybody. Marc Baum here from the All Things Oz Museum and the Ozstravaganza Festival. And I'm here with John Fricke, who many of you will know from prior Ozstravaganzas. John has been our host since back in 1990. And we really wanted to talk to him because a lot of us have kind of grown up with John around and with John hosting the event and seen him over the years.
You've watched me get old.
We've watched him get wise. And he's always, he gets a 30-second introduction and then he's off talking about someone else. And we've not spent a lot of time talking about John. So we wanted to make sure that we got together and we talked about John Fricke, the man, the myth, the legend, if you will. John is widely regarded as the world's preeminent Wizard of Oz and Judy Garland historian. He's written 9 books, I think, now altogether, right?
As of this year, yes.
Of Judy and the Wizard of Oz. He's won 2 Emmy Awards for 2 different productions of Judy Garland by myself and Judy Beyond the Rainbow biographies on television. You got a Grammy Award nomination for liner notes for Judy CD, right? A 25th anniversary CD.
Yeah, who's holding the cue card for all of it?
Yeah, no, it's just me. You've worked for the Museum of Modern Art in New York, for the Smithsonian Institute. You've been the behind-the-scenes guy at Warner Brothers for the DVD releases, and you host Ozstravaganza in Chittenango, New York, which of course I'm sure is your highest honor. So we want to know more about you and a little about what brought you here. And I think the best place to start in this unusual virtual Ozstravaganza that we're doing is with Ozstravaganza. And you started coming to the festival in 1990.
Yes.
And tell us about kind of how you got involved and how you started, because you don't live where I lived down the block. So how did you get involved with Ozstravaganza in Chittenango?
Well, in the 1980s, I spent 4 years as the editor-in-chief of the Baum Bugle, the International Wizard of Oz Club fanzine. And we had reports from people who had been to Chittenango in a couple of those issues while I was the editor about the Oz parade in Chittenango on the Saturday closest to Frank Baum's birthday. And that's all it was in the 1980s. God bless her. Clara Hauk had started this as kind of a children's costume cake and ice cream party. They marched around, I think, the parking lot of the bank or the library or something like that, and then went inside and had Ozzy kind of treats just to celebrate the fact that Chittenango, New York gave us Frank Baum, who without Frank Baum and his imagination, there would be no such things in pop culture history as the Yellow Brick Road and the Emerald City and the Flying Monkeys and everybody else. So I was aware of Chittenango. In fact, I was aware of Chittenango from the time I was 6 or 7, because I saw the MGM movie on TV when I was 5, and it was the proverbial life-changing experience. It hit me so hard. And well, there's a Yip Harburg who wrote the lyrics to the songs in the Wizard of Oz movie. Also, well, he wrote many other songs, but he and Harold Arlen, Wizard of Oz composer, did the title song for Judy Garland's last film, a song called I Could Go On Singing. And the end of the lyric has the Yip Harburg phrase, "Love does funny things when it hits you this way." And that is what happened to me with Oz. I was so swept away by the characters in the movie, by the songs, by the actors, by Judy as Dorothy, that I talked of nothing else. And my parents saw to it, the most remarkably supportive parents, in history. But they bought me an Oz book, and they bought me a Judy Garland album, and they bought me the Oz soundtrack album. And I was already going to the library on a regular basis. So I started to research, especially when I found out that there were other Oz books. And I went to find out about Frank Baum and the other Oz authors and Judy and all the rest of this. So it was a 1956 snowball that became an avalanche by about 1958. So yes, I knew Chittenango. My standing joke is I could even spell it by the time I was 8, but I was afraid to try to pronounce it because of those first 4 letters,
Right.
Very wary. Anyway.
So the Wizard of Oz was your entry to Judy Garland as well.
Oh, everything happened on that night.
Judy.
Everything happened on that night. It is remarkable when I stop and think about it. And I don't dwell on it, Mark, because luckily I'm usually busy doing stuff about it. These last 35, almost 40 years of projects. But how wonderful to have love hit me with Oz and Judy Garland and Frank Baum and all the attendant stuff, because I don't think you could ask for a more elevating, uplifting, joyous, emotionally rich. We know all about the Baum philosophies of uh, brains, heart, and courage are what and home are what are being sought in the first Oz book and in the Oz movie. But the bottom line is that you watch the movie closely, you read the book closely, everybody, everything that they want, all these people already have. They just have to learn how to use it and to plug into it in themselves. That's a great life lesson, as is the story of the journey that is the Wizard of Oz, because this is a journey for all of us, and the people you meet along the way, and the diversity of the people you meet along the way, and the humor, and the songs, always songs. Anyway, so that's how it all started. So by the time the first book I did was the 50th anniversary pictorial history of the MGM movie, the Green Book, as it's known. It came out in 1989. And I had known Munchkin Coroner, Meinhardt Robbie from the movie, for almost a decade at that point. Not well, but we'd see each other at Oz events in Pennsylvania where he lived. And in 1989, because of the book, I also got to go to the Judy Garland birthplace in Minnesota. I got to go to Liberal, Kansas. I got to go to Chesterton, Indiana. And I would meet more and more Munchkins in all of these places, because for anybody who was around in 1989, between the Green Book and the 50th anniversary videotape with a little booklet attached to the cover that I was asked to write, and the supplemental stuff of Buddy Ebsen's track and the Jitterbug track and all this stuff that they invited me to help put together, they were sending me everywhere. And I got to go to these festivals that I only heard about before. But Chittenango happened in May of 1989, before all of this hoopla started and before there was anything for me to promote. Anyway, Meinhardt, Robbie, told Barb Evans and Colleen Zimmer about me and suggested that I be invited to Chittenango for 1990.
Right. And for anyone who doesn't know, Barb and Colleen were the directors, the co-directors of the event at that time.
Yeah. And it was a Saturday morning and a Saturday afternoon. That was it. There was a parade in the morning, I believe, and autographs in the afternoon. It worked out to about 5-6 hours on a Saturday.
Right.
Well, as I've often said, and I tell this with great gratitude and warmth, the phone rang here in my New York apartment in, I think, like February of 1990. And this trembling voice, God bless Barb, she was co-chairman, but outreach was not something, they knew the Munchkins by that point. It took nothing to call a Munchkin, but to call somebody they didn't know, and see if I would be interested. And she said, may I speak to John Fricke? And I said, well, this is John Fricke. And she said, hello, Mr. Fricke, like she was reading it, just and invited me to come up for the day. Mark, I was so excited. I mean, I literally, halfway between the floor and the ceiling, to talk to somebody in Chittenango from Frank Baum's hometown, and to be invited there after hearing about the Oz Festival for so many years, for a decade, roughly a decade. Anyway, they invited me up on Saturday, and I said, well, it's just Saturday, isn't it? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, I'll have to come up on Friday. Is there some place on Friday night I could do a presentation about Frank Baum? We could talk about I was so anxious to contribute to what I was being asked to do. And there wasn't any honorarium involved. It's just, we will bring you up here. I stayed with somebody on the board, as I recall. And then I got the Munchkins were coming, several of them whom I'd met over the preceding months. And so they brought me up on a Friday, and I think we went to the Chittenango High School auditorium. Yep. And I think the 30 or 40 people who showed up, even though it was for free, were all Oz Festival organizers and volunteers and participants. And they thought, well, we've got to go to this thing. Where is it going to be? And I sat on the edge of the stage of the Chittenango High School auditorium and started to talk about Frank Baum and what he had meant to my life. And I guess when I got choked up, they realized that I was very, very sincere about all this and knowledgeable. After, you know, you can, I don't know if you can see behind me, there are the all 40 Oz books on
Yeah.
those two shelves, and the other, those are all Oz materials, and I don't even collect. This is just what
Right.
has accumulated.
Just what
Anyway,
you have.
yeah. Anyway, it's that started it, and from then on, there was a Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon program. And then eventually it went to a Saturday night and on stage interviews with the Munchkins. And then it went into Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. You know, and sometimes that was all in the first, I think, 5 or 6 years that I was coming. And I think they trusted me to uh, what else could we do, John? And I would suggest, and I guess because they thought I would be able to handle it in terms of talking and emceeing and interviewing. This is all stuff that I had worked as an entertainer for many years, singing nightclubs and cruise ships and concerts and all of that kind of stuff. And
We have some of your pictures in the John Fricke display at the museum. That's true.
yes, and if they ever disappear, you'll know who took them. Again, as I said earlier, you've watched me grow old. I mean, I was 39 when I came to my first Oz Festival in 1990, and I'll be 71 this year. So, but as long as it happens and you're willing, I'll be part of this because it is a home away from home with the local people, the fans who come from all over the country year after year. It's extraordinary. And what I
So,
think what
oh,
I
go ahead.
just I just want to say this in honor of Chittenango. I can't do it justice, but off the top of my head, what is extraordinary about what Chittenango has done is that those early festivals, once you found Meinhardt and Margaret Pellegrini and Fern Formica and the Munchkins, and they started coming, that was the big attraction. Well, we haven't had Munchkins at Chittenango for the last 9 years.
Right.
And God bless them, they gave and gave and gave, and then
Mhm.
went over the rainbow. And we remember them and we love them. But you guys have found ways, and we all have working together to bring other guests who will be appealing to the Oz community, and extensions of Baum and MGM, Baum family members, and MGM offspring, and or relatives, and other Oz movies, other Oz stage shows. It's Oz is so much more than that movie, even though that is the foundation, more or
Right.
less. But Chittenango never lets people forget that there's a lot more to Oz. Well, Migo in Kansas has done that, but they came along. They didn't come along till about 2005, as I recall, and you'd already been going for almost 30 years, if not more than 30 years at that point.
Right.
So it's you do Frank Baum proud.
Yeah.
And I think he would be astonished and overjoyed to see what his writing and his imagination have inspired. And that is everywhere apparent. You have a Yellow Brick Road in Chittenango. You have the newly revamped All Things Oz Museum and Gift Shop in Chittenango. And please God, in June 2022, you'll have another Oz extravaganza for real. Meanwhile, we've got this on video with these half a dozen or more interviews that you're going to be posting and that I get to do. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. So you talked about kind of some other festivals have popped up, and you're kind of the go-to guy to host a festival. If you're having an Oz or Judy festival, there's a go-to guy that you pull in, and part of that is because of the way that you can bring the best out of guests, right? You've had some difficult guests on stage I've seen over the years. I'm not naming names, but there have been some easier and some more difficult, obviously, and you do it all with such ease. What
And
how
panic and panic.
panic? How was the transition? So you'd done Chittenango for a while, and then Wamego or the Judy Garland Museum. I don't know who called you first, but where did you go next? What was the next one?
Well,
that
you
there?
guys were the last major festival I did, because
Oh, really?
MGM Home Video and Warner Books
Hmm.
sent me to the Garland Festival in June of '89.
Oh,
They
right.
sent me
As a guest, right?
as a guest and as a
Okay.
lecturer. And Chesterton then invited me that year in
Mhm.
Indiana. A liberal invited me. There was a number of Oz festivals that popped up, or Oz events that popped up because of the 50th anniversary. Macy's turned itself, the department store, into the land of Oz with Oz carpet and Oz statues and Oz events.
Right.
Screening at the Museum of Modern Arts, big party at MGM, which wasn't even MGM anymore, but MGM Home Video was in an office building across from the lot where Wizard of Oz had been made, and they brought in as many Munchkins as who would travel. This was all before I came to Chittenango. But
Okay.
Chittenango really kind of cemented the fact that there was Oz beyond its 50th birthday.
Mhm.
I remember so many of us saying, because there was a parade in Chesterton, there was a parade in Liberal, all these big gatherings for people. And Steve Cox, who that first year did the Munchkins of Oz book
Right.
and had interviewed them, we just looked at it. They'd put us in cars and we'd have to wave to people who would look at the sign and say, you know, who's John Frick, who's Steve Cox. But we looked at these literally tens of thousands of people lining the parade routes, and all the kids in costume, and some of the adults in costume. You know, the joke was that there is no blue and white gingham left in a 300-mile radius of this town, whichever it was. And Steve and I just thought it can't sustain itself like this, because most anniversaries, 50th anniversaries, come for movies or TV
Right.
shows, come and go. But Oz, no, it has just kept going because, well, the Munchkins were a big part of that, and now Oz itself propels the festival. So what was interesting about Chittenango, as I said, was that with my, I guess, counsel and encouragement,
Mhm.
and Barb and Colleen's encouragement, it grew from, you know, a morning and an afternoon to a couple days to 3 days,
Right.
and as I went these places the second and third and fourth time, or the new places,
Mhm.
it was because they knew, as you said, I could talk and I
Right.
could interview, and I had that kind of people. You and many people have been very gracious about saying, "Oh, we like what you do, and you make it look so easy." And uh, well, I shouldn't be. First of all, I shouldn't be doing it if I couldn't kick that across.
Right.
But there isn't an Oz festival I've ever been to that I don't wake up on Friday and Saturday and Sunday morning,
Mhm.
just as I said, panic stricken at, you know, how are we going to pull, you know, am I going to be able to pull this off again?
Right.
Because there's not a whole lot of prep. You know
That's
stuff
true.
in advance, but you can be up against the weather, you can be up against a bad sound system, you can be up
Mhm.
against a recalcitrant guest, you can be up against, you know, is there going to be a crowd? There are all these variables. So there's no way, there's no template for doing it once and then stamping it out year after year. And I
Right.
genuinely care about making it as good for the people who come out as it possibly can be, because
Right.
I love it. I love Oz. There's a flash,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I want them to love it and feel that the time and the trip and the money is justified. And the fact that they come back year after year after year, I think this speaks that their agreement with that.
And when I think you were in on this early on when the Munchkins were getting older. A couple of us on the committee here at Ostravaganza started to do what we called the Plan B, what we affectionately called the Plan B, which was, if no Munchkins are here, what is our program? What do we
Yes.
do? And so we started to kind of pre-book guests based on the fact that there might or might not be. So what's our wish list? Who do we want to contact? And 2012 was the year that we got I think for the first time that we had an entire program ready to go in case no Munchkins could make it. They weren't traveling or didn't come or whatever. And we had Margaret Pellegrini that year, but we also had Andre DeShields from The Wiz and Gregory Maguire from Wicked. And that was a delightful cast and crew to have together, along with Bob and Claire Baum. And Myrna Swenson was here that year. And there's some great pictures of all of them in their costumes together, which was a lot of fun. But the Wiz aspect and bringing that in was a big part. It was very important for Andre. And I think he said this on stage with you, was the first time that I heard it from him, that the Wiz became more mainstream. He always felt like it was kind of a relegated as a side note in history. But it's always been a little bit mainstream in that you, in 1975, actually did the review for the Wiz for the Oz or for the Baum Bugle for the
Yes.
International Wizard of Oz Club, correct? So
Yes.
tell us about that and kind of that how that came to be. And you were there opening night, and then of course you got to connect with Andre on stage in the most magnificent way back in 2012.
Well, again, I was writing. I started submitting stuff to the Baum Bugle when I was 11, when I first joined the club, and they had me writing full articles by the time I was 15. And I moved to New York in October 1974, and at that point we knew the Wiz was out of town and coming into Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And the out of town reviews were mixed, but it was coming. The trouble was that there was absolutely no Broadway enthusiasm for the property. Everybody kept thinking, in an all black Wizard of Oz with a pop rock score, how much of a travesty is this going to be? How much of a letdown is it going to be? How dare they compete with MGM? Because the MGM movie had then been on TV about 15 times, the big annual event for everybody. And Sunday afternoon, January 5th, 1975, my phone rang. The phone is a big part of my saga, obviously.
Yeah.
And Fred Meyer, who was the secretary and the backbone of the Oz Club for decades, and was always suggesting, do this Oz project, do that project. Would you do this? Could you go there? And he said, I think you should review The Wiz for the Baum Bugle. And I said, well, gee, Fred, I'd be happy to do that. But tonight's the opening night, and they have already posted the closing notice. That's something the producers could do so that if the reviews weren't good, the cast already had the 48 hours notice that they needn't come to work the day after opening night. And the producers wouldn't be responsible for additional salaries and that sort of thing. So I said, tonight may be the only performance. There had been previews, and I could have gone to one of those if I'd been asked sooner. But Fred said, go to the opening night. And I said, Fred, you can't, it's a Broadway opening night. All those tickets are bespoken and black tie and limousines and all this. And he said, well, try. And I thought, well, yes, I will make this yeoman effort, which meant walking from the corner of 45th and 8th to the corner of 44th and 8th and crossing the street to the Majestic Theater where the Wiz was about to premiere. And I had no trouble, less than no trouble, buying a balcony seat for $6. Fred said the club will reimburse you. And I said, well, I don't have any, New York, new to New York, no money. Anyway, so I got a ticket in the balcony. I thought, well, this is nice. So I went back and came back here and called Fred, and he said, well, wonderful, review it for the Bugle. So I think the opening night was at 6:30. This has all transpired in the place of about 4 hours. And I thought, I'm going to the theater, my first Broadway opening. And there were a couple limos, but I got into the theater and the main floor was filled. And the first few rows of the mezzanine were filled. But in the balcony, you could have done an entirely other show, shot a moose, put in a bowling alley. It's just barren. On opening night. And the few of us who had bought balcony tickets were way the heck up, near the rafters. And just before the show started, the usherettes brought us all down into the front mezzanine so that that was at least full if people look up, performers looked up. And I had a wonderful time. The show I did not think the show was a masterpiece. In my review, I say, it's kind of, they go for humor at the expense of through line emotion. You can't, you want the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion to get what they want, but they're all played for vaudeville and comedy for the most part. They had moments, Be a Lion and the Tin Man's Act One closing song. I'm blanking on the something about his heart, if his heart could speak, or if I only, something like that. So there was emotionalism, but there was so much extravaganza and settings and beautiful costumes and scenery by Jeffrey Holder going on that you didn't get as emotionally involved. But there was no question that the songs were effective, that the performers were effective. I mean, when Stephanie Mills at 16 stood there and sang Home, and Toto ran on to her and she picked him up, blackout. I mean, I'm crying now, but it was very effective, and I was very happy to review it. And I remember going out and getting the major papers the next day, very, very mixed reviews. And but On the strength of those, Universal Pictures, which I believe was one of the main backers, decided to invest like another $100,000 in ads. And they did a great big showpiece ad in the papers with the
Yeah.
good parts of the reviews, and there were plenty of them.
Yeah.
And then they did something that has been done to death since, but was not common then. They did a TV commercial,
television commercial. Yep.
and all you heard 20 times a day was ease on down
Right.
the road. Well, the black audience found the whiz, the Broadway audience found the whiz, and the show that was supposed to close on January 5th, 1975 ran until for like 1,700 performances,
Right.
had
Yep.
moved to a theater, another theater eventually when the Majestic was needed for something else. It was just extraordinary.
It won
And
6 out of 7 Tony Awards it was nominated for,
including Best Musical.
including Best Musical. And as a fun side note, it was my first Broadway musical. So I don't know if you know that. In 1976, my grandmother brought me, and we went and saw The Wiz on Broadway. It was my first musical, and she hated it, by the way. I loved it. I was hooked from the beginning and thought this is the most fabulous thing I've ever seen in my life. I just want to do this for a living. And my grandma was like, we should have seen Pippin. You know, she just was not into it at all. It was rock and roll and not Broadway at all for her. I loved it.
She would have loved the sex and the language in Pippin.
And yeah, and when I saw it, Andre had left the cast, I believe, to go do another show, but I got to see it, and I have the playbill from it when Ken Page was in as the lion. So Ken Page came in, I believe he was the third lion to come in, and then we had Ken Page at the festival a little after that, and much to my surprise, and this is some of the beauty of John Fricke, you got him to sing a song from Fiddler on the Roof, you may recall.
Well, I did ask him to sing.
Wild thing. It was what part, I think the question from the audience is what part, you've done a lot of shows, you've done, Ain't Misbehavin', and your Oogie Boogie and Nightmare Before Christmas, and you've been in the Wiz, and you've been in the Wizard of Oz at Madison Square Garden. What role haven't you played that you'd love to? And he said he'd always like to do Fiddler, and then stood up and just sang a cappella from Fiddler, which was amazing. And that's the special connection I think that you have with guests. You put everybody at ease immediately at ease, and then get things out of them that really is the sign of a great interviewer. And I think part of that is because you're an excellent entertainer. And to your point, you entertain first, right? And when you say, you're always nervous about, is anyone going to like it? Is it going to go okay? That's the entertainer part of you, I think.
Yeah.
But when somebody's right in front of you, your attention is devoted 100% to that person. And that's an amazing thing that not a lot of interviewers have. And you see it on, now we have 50,000 television stations, and you see interviewers all the time and live in person. We've had some at different festivals who can't do it. The interview turns into being all about them and not about the guest, and you're very good at that part of it. And that kind of leads me into, so you've done all these different guests over the years at all these festivals, but thinking of the Ozstravaganza guests, who's been your favorite? Like, what's been the moment where John Fricke was really excited to be talking to this person? This was a great guest.
Oh, I think I cannot say one, because it would do such a disservice. There have been so many, because there are so many aspects of Oz. We have had so many representatives of those aspects of Oz. I mean, I think of, okay, we'll talk in terms of Frank Baum. We've had his niece, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren as participating in all this. His niece who knew Frank Baum, Cynthia Tessino. Then we had Bob Baum and his wife Claire doing their act as Frank and Maude, family history. Those are extremely resonant moments to bring home to Chittenango, and for anybody who has any interest at all beyond Over the Rainbow and If I Only Had a Brain, this is magical. Then I think in terms of writers, and the writers we've had, Roger Baum, great grandson, and Gregory Maguire, whom you mentioned. I mean, this is a man who has sold 18 zillion copies of books, and came out of the goodness of his heart.
Hmm.
He can get $25,000 to get up and talk someplace for
Right.
an hour,
Sure.
but no, he came to us because of his affinity for Baum and the Oz books, and what he's been able to do with Wicked, what
Right.
he and his associates have done with Wicked. I think in terms of, and speaking of Wicked, I don't think there could be a more magical moment
Hmm.
than the opportunity to sit on the high school stage and interview Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Pippin and wrote
Right.
Godspell and wrote the songs for Wicked, and then to have Michael McCory Rose and Tiffany
Hmm.
Haas, one of Broadway Fieros and one of the Broadway Glindas,
Yep.
sing from the score with Stephen Schwartz at the piano. Then you go to the Munchkins, of course. I
Right.
mean, being on stage with one of them was amazing, but to be on stage with 5 or 6 of them, and have Jerry let loose with a 4-letter word because it was in the evening and he was tired, or to have Margaret, my asking her a question and handing her the microphone, and then she takes the microphone and goes clear the other side of the stage, and there's no sense I'll ever get it back. I mean, that is extraordinary. I think of Oz fans who have come, like Bronson
Hmm.
Pinchot, whom
Right.
everybody knows as Balky from Perfect Strangers
Hmm.
or from Beverly Hills Cop.
Right.
But again, he is somebody who grew up loving Oz in the Oz Club. I knew about Bronson, Bronny, and Johnny. We are to each other when we are
Hmm.
silly. But I've known about him since I was a teenager. He's younger than everybody's
Right.
younger than I am now, but um, we'd never worked together till Chittenango. We had hung out here in New York when he was doing a Broadway show or something like that,
Yep.
or in town doing PR.
Right.
Again, MGM offshoot people, Jane
Right.
Lahr's
Yep.
daughter, who speaks beautifully about her father.
Hmm.
I think of Gabe Gale, whom you'll see in an interview across this Ozstrav weekend, who
Hmm.
debuted his Ages of Oz book when it came out at the festival,
Yep.
and we now have a book together. But beyond that, he is somebody who fell in love with Oz,
Right.
saw the movie, but then immediately glommed on to reading Frank Baum and loving the illustrations, drawing his own stuff, and he comes to share all that. My own
And met you several years ago at Nostravaganza Festival
oh
before you were
that
working on the book. So that's where
we
you and
yeah
Gabe met.
we didn't even talk about that, but in 2000, well, what is 14 years ago, 2000,
7.
yeah, I guess,
This is 21. That would be 2007, right?
yeah, I guess I can't do
7,
math.
8, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Something there. We were at the high school on the Friday night, and I was on
Hmm.
stage with the Munchkins interviewing them. And these 2 young men or 3 young men came in and sat down right in the front row on house left,
Hmm.
and or house right rather, and they just glowered at me. I could barely see them because we had the stage lights on,
Right.
and one of them was, especially, his legs were stretched out. Gabe is 112 feet tall,
Hmm.
and he was standing there. I guess then he would have been in his 20s, and he just glowered at me, and I thought, is this somebody with a subpoena? Is this a creditor? Why am I getting this glare? But then basically he had heard about me at that point, and I think he came to find out if I was legit Oz, if I was more than MGM, if I was Baum too. And if
You
you
were the
see,
real deal.
yeah, exactly. And if you see his interview, when we talk about the work we've done together since, you will know that we hit it off, and that's been a great another Oz part of my life. I think of 2 years ago and 3 years ago when we
Mhm.
had the producer, conceptualizer of Chasing Rainbows, the Road to Oz stage
Right.
musical,
Yeah.
Tina Marie Casamento Libby, and then the next year Ruby Rakos, who plays Judy Garland at age 13, 14, 15, 16 in that show as guests to promote the
Mhm.
production, and to, in Ruby's case, to get up and sing.
Right.
I mean, we had I'm blanking on her name, but the wonderful girl who was one of the Alphabas on the road with
Yeah.
Wicked.
Felicia Ricci.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And she
Who her
sang.
first night as a standby got called to stage to play the part. Yeah.
And,
And yeah.
just the people
Right.
who are generous with their talents, whatever they are, their time. And I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but it is just, it becomes a family reunion. It
Right.
was a family reunion after the first year, I think, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And that is, it's part of coming home. The hotel that has been the same hotel for years now, and
Mhm.
the staff there, and the staff at the restaurants that we go to, and seeing what Chittenango has achieved in having, well, we're going to have property and then maybe we'll build a museum. Well, that didn't work out. We've got a storefront. Well, that didn't work out. Now we've got another storefront, and now it is reality and
Right.
becoming more real, as people can see behind you,
Yeah.
more real all the time. And
Well, and
more,
now we own a building, and we're a 501c3, and we're chartered historical foundation, and we've come a long way in the last few years. But we've come a long way in the 31 years since your first trip here to
oh,
Chittenango,
absolutely.
for
We've
sure.
come along the way together.
I would, yeah, exactly, exactly. I would be remiss not to let you go without talking about your new project, your first fiction book, The
After a
Art of
fashion,
Oz. Is that
yes.
correct? Is that
It's
accurate?
called The Art of Oz.
The Art of
I
Oz.
came to it. Rizzoli, the great coffee table art book
Hmm.
publisher, went to Gabe Gale after seeing a portfolio of his Oz character drawings from the Baum books, and with Jane Lahr as the book packager, because that's what she does. Uh, they put together a book that is now called The Art of Oz, and that'll be out in October. And the idea behind it is very much, and you'll hear more about this in the interview with Gabe that
Hmm.
we do, but the conception of it, and this was long before I was involved, was that it would treat Oz the way Baum and Ruth Plumley Thompson and the other royal historians treated Oz, as a real, truly live place, as
Right.
they say in the movie. And it's wonderful because the fantasy starts on page one of the text and goes right straight through up to the last. It only drops in the afterword when
Right.
Gabriel Gell is interviewed by Michael Patrick Hearn.
Hmm.
And even then, there's a great respect for Oz. It doesn't burst the bubble. But the idea is that each of the chapters that detail some of the characters of Oz with Gabe's drawings
Hmm.
are told in the voices of the famous Oz characters: Dorothy,
Right.
the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, Toto, Glinda, the Wizard, the Wogglebug. And the original writer fell out
Mhm.
last summer. And so all of a sudden in September, October, November, December, and January, I was interviewing
Mhm.
Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, and getting their thoughts down about the Oz characters and their adventures, and Toto and all of them, and then transcribing the interviews. They signed off on them. Princess Ozma gives sanction right at the beginning of the book that
Right.
she's so pleased that Gabe's illustrations are going to be seen, and that the characters are going to be the ones who lead readers through Gabe's illustration, because as she says in her proclamation,
Mhm.
there could be no better guides through the kingdom of Oz than these people.
Right.
So it was a great honor to be asked to do the book and to be
Right.
given the responsibility of, well, as I said, I have been an Oz fan since I was 5. That's almost 65 years, or I guess it'll be 65 years officially in November.
Mhm.
And I've talked to the Oz characters countless times over the decades, but this was the first time uh, it was official, and they were lovely to me, as you might
Well, good.
imagine.
I would hope so. I would hope
Yeah.
so. What a powerhouse book that's going to be. Just think of the Oz creativity there with Gabriel Gale, with Michael Patrick Hearn, arguably the foremost expert on all things Baum.
Absolutely.
Jane Lahr, the daughter of the Cowardly Lion from the MGM film, and John Fricke, who's the master of all things Oz. Definitely the Oz historian of my generation. And
Now I know you're reading.
no, it's not. Not. So yeah, it's great. We're looking forward to the book, and it's coming out in October of 2021. So we're
Yeah,
excited about
October
that.
5th officially. Again, a lot
Yeah,
depends on how the country evolves and comes back to life,
right.
which is why we're doing this virtually, because although there are many signs of life now, you don't want to encourage 30,000 people to come out at a time
Right.
for Ostravaganza. Next year, please God.
Yeah. Hopefully, we're beyond the pandemic and back into a world of Oz as we like to see it up close and personal, and like you said, like a family reunion here in Chittenango.
Yes.
John Fricke, thank you for sharing some of your memories and some information about you that we don't get to see that side of you as often. And I think that's really interesting. And thank you for being a part of Ozstravaganza for so many years, and hopefully so many years to come. We love having you, and all my best. And thank you so much for the work you do, not just with Chittenango and Ozstravaganza and the All Things Oz Museum, but kind of for the Oz universe in general. We appreciate all that you do to bring Oz to life for everyone.
Thank you. It is a privilege. It is an honor. It is a joy. It is stress, but it is basically those other things. I was asked, I think it was in 2005, MGM Home Video sent me the Deauville Film Festival in France to launch a new Oz DVD set. And there was a press conference in multiple languages and a lot of individual interviews with European journalists. And I did 15 of those in one day, and I was kind of wearing down. And the last interviewer asked me a question that had never been asked point blank before. And he said, "What does Oz mean to you now?" Again, after my life, which we've just recapped, thanks to you. And what does Oz mean to me now? And there was a beat while my mind was racing. But I have said this so often, Mark, when I'm talking, when I'm emceeing, when I'm sitting here writing, that if you're really, really lucky, when you need it most, God sends the words. And I heard myself saying something that I had never before said, but that I'm grateful that I remember from that spontaneous moment. He said, "What does Oz mean to you now?" And I said, "Oz is a passport to my life." And that's the truth. There hasn't been a day since November 3rd, 1956, that Oz has not in some way permeated my thoughts, my heart. Since the late 1980s, it's permeated my work, my friendships, my family, my extended family, which includes your family. I am so grateful for all the opportunities, and I'm so grateful to be counted among somebody who fell in love with Oz a long time ago, and I'm so glad it never let go.
Yeah. Well, we're glad too, and we're glad to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it. I have to thank Colton Baum for helping us with the technical issues to get these up and going, and also Cassie Weed, who is doing our post-production. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Ozstravaganza, hopefully 2022.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.